Northern hardwood forests, seen here in the Adirondack Park, are a mixed forest containing maples, beech, ash, birch, and aspen, but they also include many softwood conifers, leading us to call this forest type a hardwood mixed forest. The hardwood mixed forest is the northern forest's largest landscape type, covering about 1/2 of the northern forest and occupies the region's best soils. Conifers are seen here on lake shores, but they also grow throughout the hardwood forest on rocky outcrops, steeper slopes, thinner soils, along streams and rivers, and in places sunlight is able to penetrate the hardwood canopy. Glacial eskers normally look like railroad beds, raised above flat ground. But here we see an unusual group of forested eskers dividing lakes and ponds. "2016 was an unusual year for peak colors, as the red maples peaked out in color ranging from bright red to burgundy, sugar maples from orange red to bright red, ash a purplish brown, birch and aspen from dull to bright yellow, plus the yellow browns of beech and oaks. Some years the red maples peak early and are mostly gone by peak color, but in this unusual year they all peak together. Here is a unique hillside and cliff face, with hardwoods clinging to the rock face on small pockets of soil. At higher elevations, this terrain would be populated with conifers that grow better in such thin soils and extremes of soil moisture. We fly the Chub River drainage in the High Peaks region of the Adirondack Park and see the relationship of lowland conifers on the wet or poorly drained flat below, northern hardwood mixed forest on the slopes above with better drainage and soils, and montane conifers above the hardwoods on steeper slopes at elevations above 2,700 feet on the ridge to the left and on slopes of the 4,000-foot Sawtooth Mountains in the distance. The Chub River is a good location to see moose. Hardwoods populate the slopes of the Moose Creek drainage as we travel northeast climbing to a pass. Conifers dominate on rocky hills and steeper slopes, and also on wetter soils along Moose Creek. Montane conifers can be seen above the hardwoods on the slopes of Street Mountain to the right. Conifers, including hemlock, along the creek are very important to brook trout. They provide bank stabilization and shade to the creek, keeping water temperatures down. If we lose the hemlocks to woolly adelgid, a pest imported from Europe ravaging hemlocks and Fraser firs in 18 eastern states, we could lose significant brook trout habitat in the northeast from water temperature rise due to the increased sunlight. Passing through the pass, or notch as it is called locally, we continue to see conifers mixed into the northern hardwood forest at breaks in the terrain or on rocky outcrops and steep slopes as expected, but also scattered among the hardwoods at unseen changes in the terrain or soils. Hardwood tree canopies reflect their glacial history. Where silts and clays were washed away, leaving outwash plains and glacial eskers of sand and gravel, we find lowland conifers growing with a few paper birch and red maples, as these outwash soils do not contain sufficient nutrients to support most hardwoods. Where silts and clays were deposited in alluvial deposits, lake bottoms, or where silts and clays suspended in glacial ice simply dropped in place as the ice melted, called glacial till, a hardwood forest now flourishes. Sugar maple, red maple, and American beech tolerate more shade than other hardwoods and thrive here on rich soils. Yellow birch and paper birch are also common. Striped maple does well in the shady understory. Where soils are more moist and rich, white ash, basswood, elm, and hop hornbeam grow in soils with high pH and nutrient levels. A few balsam firs are seen here, growing under a partially open maple and beech canopy. When the hardwood canopy is dense, it is difficult for conifers to receive enough sunlight to gain a foothold. These trees are about 100 years old and populate an area that was heavily logged in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Old growth trees seen here have an average age of 350 years in an area that was never logged. These old growth trees provide a living history of the forest by telling us a lot about their past. We know climate history of the northern forest from studying growth rings in these trees. This forest canopy is representative of the northern hardwoods mixed forest in the Adirondack Park, where hardwoods cover about 50% of the park. Hardwood tree canopies reflect the richness of soils they grow on. The more nutrients, depth of soil, and right amount of moisture, the better the growth. Soils rich in silts and clays can hold moisture longer, greatly affecting tree health and longevity. The northern hardwood mixed forest covers half of the northern forest region and is the most common primary forest type, growing on the region's best soils. It is the forest type that gives us such extraordinary fall colors and provides us with much exercise raking fall leaves. These colors also remind us that snow is coming.